So the questions are what are really the famous part, the lowest hanging fruit, that if anyone's heard about restorative practices, they picture people sitting in circles and they picture some questions being asked. So we're looking at not blaming or shaming anyone. That's why we're not using words like you're being judgmental or appropriate, inappropriate, and like those kind of judgment words. We're not going to use those. But we're really seeking to understand, like, what is their unmet need? Why are they doing this thing? So let me just show you what they are. They also, though, are going to give a chance for empathy to happen. When you start talking and using these questions, you don't have empathy immediately. That person doesn't have it immediately. Empathy comes when we hear stories. That's why the best speakers, the best, storytellers are the people that kind of capture our hearts the most. And so if you want teachers to have more empathy for students, they need to hear their story. On the other hand, if we're looking at teachers and students, if you want students to have empathy for the teacher, they first need to believe that the teacher likes them and cares about them, and then hear their story, and then they'll have empathy as well. So kind of an interesting little add-on of what kids need. They need to believe that you care. So that's why being calm, using affective language in the classroom, doing community building circles brings that belonging and that connection that we're talking about, that the research says is so important in a classroom. Here are the questions, the magic questions. So the first set of questions are for the person that did the harm, the person that hurt someone else. In your situations, the other person, right, that you were talking about. So the questions are: what happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since? Who's been affected by what you did and in what way? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? Then the flip side, and there literally is, the IIRP has question cards, and you flip them over, side one, side two. On the flip side, the questions are for the person who was harmed. In some areas, they call it the victim. We don't really talk about victims in school. This is not a judicial system. We don't have perpetrators and victims, and I don't think that language is good to use in schools. It kind of perpetrates the problem that we're trying to undo. So really, we have people, we all harm people, and we all get harmed, and especially in schools. So the questions for the person who got harmed: what did you think when you realized what happened? What impact did this incident have on you and on others? What's been the hardest thing for you? And what do you think needs to happen to make things right? So those are the questions, and they're magic. I've used them individually with kids in hallway conversations. I've run entire circles with these questions. The questions don't change. Not really. No matter how intense the incident, they go back to these questions. They use these questions in hearings in other countries like New Zealand and Australia that have really come a long way. Northern Ireland, restorative practices is like the law. People stick to these questions and they solve community problems, crimes, all kinds of things. So it's incredibly powerful, and it can be used just in the hallway at your school. So I think what would be best is for people here to actually experience what it would feel like to ask and answer the questions, because I know for me, I didn't really get the full impact until I actually tried it. And so that's actually what we're going to do. I want you to think, and this is not a share out right now, I want you to think about a time in which you were harmed. Don't pick your worst, darkest secret. Right now is not the time. Pick a low-level something, and you're not going to tell the story to your partner. We're going to break in partners. What you're going to do is simply, you're going to answer the questions that they're going to ask you about it. And then you're going to switch and you'll be the asker. So that's how that's going to work. So the person that is asking the questions, Stick to the script. Don't ask any more. Don't say, tell me more. You don't even need to say, uh-huh, mm-hmm. You don't even need to show a lot of empathy. It's okay. You just ask the questions and see what happens, okay? This is, in fact, a lot of people just simply look down and read them because they want to sort of have that third point reference. It breaks the intensity if you're in person, and that's fine. We have people with these on their lanyards at school or posted outside classrooms, different places, posted in classrooms, and it's wonderful to just read them. So you don't have to be a therapist. All right, so we're going to do a share out, and we want to know what was that experience like for you to ask and to answer?
I
Okay.
like them.
No, good.
Because I like it, because I have used these with some of my meetings when Jillian has me talking, trying to find out what's going on with the kids if they get in trouble or something. So I really like it because it does take the judgment out of it, and it gives you a clear guideline of exactly what to ask. So I appreciated it.
Amanda, how did it feel to ask the questions?
It felt good to ask, and then, like you said, again, to check myself to make sure that I was just fully listening and asking without judgment and without sharing anything myself. So giving that full space to Eileen.
Right. Good. So you're not saying, oh, I felt that happened to me too. And yeah, we don't do that. Good. All right. So let's go the other way. This is how did it feel to answer the questions? Let's start with Peggy. Peggy, can you tell us, how did it feel to answer the questions?
I liked it because, well, Shannon always has a really good empathetic voice in the way she asks the questions, and so I didn't feel judged or I felt heard, and she has a lot of empathy, so I appreciated it.
Great. Let's see, that was Peggy. So Shannon, you're next. Shannon, how did it feel to answer the questions?
Well, it kind of puts you right into that space of, how you're feeling about like the situation and everything. So they're really good questions, I feel. Yeah.
Yeah. Amanda, how did it feel to answer?
It was a lot harder than I anticipated. And I think I found myself really overthinking and analyzing my answers. So it felt good to answer, but also I think I overthought it.
Okay. Eileen.
I think with the students, I have almost a preconceived idea about the outcome that I'm hoping for. With myself, I never really thought about what I wanted. I mean, that didn't really ever cross my mind. So it was interesting. It was kind of a clarifying question.
So you're saying the last question, what needs to happen to make it right?
Right.
You hadn't really thought of it before. Okay. What was it like? Was there a certain question, this is kind of off script, that surprised you how it impacted like the way you felt when you're answering them? Was there one of the questions that just stands out, like that was hard or that was powerful? I always found that the most powerful question, you're like the third question in, and then they ask you, what's been the hardest thing for you?
That was
and
the
that
part.
one always like gets me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it like gets you in your gut. You're like, and what I find when I use this with kids or teachers, like that is like the one that gets to the heart of the matter. And that's the one I lean in, because sometimes they haven't really gotten to it until there. It's facts, and it's this happened and she said this, and but the hardest thing is now I am so humiliated I can't go talk to my friends, or or whatever. And that's when we go to that repair part. What do we need to do to make this right? Like, it's always that. How do we get healing or repair or fixing that hard part if we can. Or, you know, some of the questions will say like, how can we make this as right as possible? You know, sometimes we can't actually erase something, you know, that happened, but we can make it as right as possible. So that's a powerful question. Any other thoughts, comments, or just questions about how you might use these or anything like that?
I feel that I really like this type of questioning, and I feel like it's going to yield excellent results. Sometimes little kids just don't have the teeny little ones, like the 5-year-olds, just don't have the patience
Right.
to sit through these questions and kind of process. And, you know, in the meantime, the other kids are getting a little squirrely because like, where are you? What are you doing, teacher?
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah,
So
well,
kind of
that's
a time,
true.
yeah, time and developmental, I guess, would be my question or my comment.
Yeah, that's kind of two different things. If you've seen the questions that I developed, they're on the back of the office referral form that you use.
I have
And
seen.
for younger kids, the questions that I whittled it down to were, you know, what happened? And there's a box where they can like draw it. Who was hurt? How can you fix it?
Okay.
Simple,
That sounds-
simple, simple.
Mhm.
So that one, you know, and then they can draw it. I've never found kids are particularly good at doing that stuff independently. They really need someone to walk them through.
Mhm.
None of us really are all that reflective, but that helps. And then in our next session in the restorative chat, we're going to talk about how do you take time away from your whole class if you have to have one of these conversations.